What's going on, Chargers fans? Chargers Now is presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Will Ortner, and on today's show, we're going to go through some cut candidates for our favorite team in Los Angeles because after mandatory minicamp, OTAs, we learned kind of where the pecking order is for some of these players. And look, I don't want to sit here and say that this is something that has to happen or needs to happen, but from time to time, unfortunately, teams have to move on from a player. Time to time, teams have to look at guys and say, there are younger options right now that might be a little bit cheaper, might be a little bit better than what you are right now. So we'll go through 5 players that might end up getting cut by the Los Angeles Chargers and not make that final 53-man roster. Right now, though, we're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. Hit that sub button if you would. Here's the thing. You're going to get a ton of Chargers content, and you can get a ton of Chargers content from a multitude of other sources. But what we do here at Chargers Now is we make sure that we have content that informs and entertains you. And at the same time, we make sure that we get that content out to you every single day. Hit that sub button. Don't miss what we're doing here. I think the most obvious cut candidate for the Los Angeles Chargers, unfortunately for him, is Bud Dupree. It certainly feels like Dupree was brought in to this Los Angeles defense, and the expectation was he was going to be kind of that second or third guy in that edge rusher room, and largely Bud Dupree has been, well, disappointing. He's been someone that hasn't necessarily played up to what the expectations were for him at his previous stops. It certainly feels like he is starting to lose his spot in the rotation and move down and down and down and down the depth chart. And when you look at this team in Los Angeles, right now there are a lot of young players that are being brought in that, in my opinion, are going to be able to potentially outplay him and make this squad. I heard a ton of content around Dame Tucker. I gave you a ton of content around Dame Tucker and everything that he was able to do. He's a UDFA. He's a kid that's had a lot of success, and you didn't hear a lot about Bud Dupree having a lot of success. Thule is going to make the squad, obviously. Khalil Mack isn't going anywhere. Akeem Mesidor, he's not going anywhere. Actually had a fairly successful offseason with the Los Angeles Chargers. Are you really planning on keeping a 5th edge rusher on this team? Maybe, but I still feel like that doesn't make sense then to keep Dupree with the output that he's had when you can keep a guy like Kennard who's a little bit younger, had a little more success. And in my opinion, I just think that it's time to cut bait with Bud Dupree. His production has dipped. He's not the player that he once was. He's not the player that the Los Angeles Chargers thought that they were going to get. There's a lot of younger talent that's come in and, in my personal opinion, really showed just what they can do. And at this point, why would you keep a guy around that is not performing at the level that you need him to perform at? And you have a younger talent that, in my personal opinion, can come in and do the exact same thing that he's doing at a cheaper rate. Now, the Los Angeles Chargers don't need to cut anyone because of cap issues. Obviously, the Chargers have a ton of space. So then it does become talent-based and merit-based. And at this point, this is a merit-based cut, unfortunately, for Bud Dupree. I'm not trying to call for anyone's jobs. I certainly hope that no one does it in our comment section for me here at Chat Sports. But at some point, you have to have a conversation about how talented a player is and what their production is. If I have a production dip at Chat Sports, there's going to be a conversation about me not being paid here anymore, right? So, unfortunately, that's where it seems the Chargers are at with Bud Dupree. The next potential cut candidate. Let's have a conversation about Junior Colson. Because I'll tell you right now, this young linebacker, there was a lot of hope early on that he was going to have a lot of success with this Chargers team. Obviously, high draft pick coming out of college. Someone that could add into this linebacker unit, hopefully take over, be a star. Now, injuries have kind of played a role in why maybe that ascension has not happened, but it does feel like we're in a conversation right now where Junior might be a bust. And if he's a bust, well, the Chargers got to move on from him. We've got more to discuss on today's show, but I need to let you know that today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Let's look at my lineup for the football action this season. I have the more on Justin Herbert pass yards. I believe the offense will be much improved in LA, and that should hopefully lead to more pass yards for Herbert. That's why I have the more on his passing yards. I have the more on Quentin Johnston receiving TDs. I believe that Johnston will have more opportunities to catch the football with a hopefully improved offensive line in Los Angeles. That's why I have the more on his receiving TDs. I also have the more on Rashid Shaheed receiving yards. A full offseason in Seattle should help Shaheed build better chemistry with Darnold. That's why I have the more on his receiving yards. New user offer. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. Clickable link to download the app is in the comments and description. When we look at the career stat line for Colson, it frankly just isn't good enough, in my personal opinion. Obviously, injuries have played a role, and that's why you see a guy on your screen right now with less than 30 tackles to his name with someone who was drafted super high. And I understand why there might be a conversation, hey, keep him around. He's still a young player. He's still someone that can add to this team. When you look at the linebacker depth chart, obviously you've got some guys that are aging to a degree and guys who it does feel like, hey, maybe their time in the National Football League may be numbered, but it certainly doesn't feel like it should be because of Junior Colson. It certainly feels like at this point, it's probably best for the Los Angeles Chargers to just cut bait and move on. And again, I'm not trying to attack the guy here. It just certainly feels like at this point, you know what you're getting. And unfortunately, in the National Football League, it's rare that a player is injured and then stops getting injured. And this might be a case of where injuries derail what should have been a very successful career. And that's unfortunate. I'm going to put my hands up on that one. I'm not excited about making this video when it comes to people who could end up losing their jobs, but certainly feels like it might be time to move on from this one. Will Junior Colson make the Chargers 53-man roster? Let me know down below in the comment section what your prediction is. Is that going to be a yes or a no? Next player, let's talk about Derius Davis. Now, when I look at Davis, this was a guy who should have came in and had a lot of success in Los Angeles. And I think as you look at his career, he just, doesn't have that success. Now, there's an argument that can be made, hey, the offense wasn't great. The offense wasn't designed for him. This is a spot where Davis probably should have had more success. The idea of bring him in as a special teams guy, develop him into a wide receiver talent, very similar to what Seattle did with Tyler Lockett, very similar with what Chicago eventually did once they made Devin Hester switch over to wide receiver instead of being a corner. It just feels like Davis at this point doesn't fit that mold. And when you look at the wide receiver unit as a whole, how many receivers do you expect the Chargers to keep? 5, maybe 6, right? And when you look at this crew, it feels like you have your first 4 guys already locked and loaded between Johnston, Harris, McConkey, and Brennan Thompson. Now, that doesn't mean that Davis can't play his way into the role, especially with the success that he has on the special teams unit, or the hopeful success that he should have this year with the special teams unit. But you also have to realize that you've got some special teams guys that are already on this team that can do the exact same, and they're more so used in the offense and, frankly, the defense of this team. In my opinion, I think that Davis is probably on the outside looking in, especially if the Chargers do end up going out and signing Keenan Allen. Now, we know that the Chargers have had conversations about bringing Keenan Allen in, but there obviously hasn't been a signing there yet. I do think that Allen will be a Charger. The question is, when will he be a Charger? Probably closer to training camp, if not a little bit through training camp. But it certainly feels like if Keenan Allen gets signed to this team, that's just the final death nail there for Davis, especially with the success that Brennan Thompson had and where I do believe Brennan Thompson will be at for this Los Angeles Chargers team. Next, let's talk about Scott Matlock, because you would have thought that bringing in a guy like Mike McDaniel would actually help Matlock make the team. Now, he was obviously a defensive lineman, ended up transitioning to that fullback position for the Los Angeles Chargers, and that is something that, in Mike McDaniel's type of offense, he wants to have a fullback that is out on the field. He likes to use a fullback because of the different matchup nightmares that type of position can create. It also allows for fun things to do, whether it's in the running game or in the passing game as well. And I'm not here to tell you that Matlock is not a good fullback. There's just so few of them in the league right now. And so when you can have that elite type of fullback, you really want to make sure that you bring that type of player in. And the Los Angeles Chargers, Mike McDaniel made it very clear what type of fullback he wants in, and he wants a guy that's been doing this for a long period of time. That guy is Alec Ingold. Now, Ingold obviously used to play in Las Vegas, or, well, played for the Raiders throughout his career at different points. Last was in Miami with the Dolphins. And if Mike McDaniel, your new offensive coordinator, the guy they gave the keys to, is going around beating the drum for Ingold, well, then it makes a lot of sense that he would be the guy who makes the team. He's also a professional fullback. He's not someone that converted from a different position to this position. Now, what'll be interesting to see here is, do the Chargers decide to keep two fullbacks? I don't see a world where they would do that. It's not unheard of. The Seattle Seahawks just won a Super Bowl. Well, they kept two fullbacks. They had Robbie Oots and Brady Russell. But Brady Russell did a ton of special team stuff and was even a captain during the Super Bowl for what he did on those ST units. I don't know that Matlock ends up fitting that mold. So when I look at a guy like Alec Ingold, I think that he's coming in, he's taking that number one fullback spot, and I don't see a world where the Chargers really want to make sure that they keep another fullback on this team. We have more to discuss. In fact, one more player that we have to talk about potentially being a cut candidate. But before we do that, I need to let you know that today's show is also made possible by SeatGeek. When it's time to get out of the house, there's not many better options right now than a ball game. And with SeatGeek being MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. I thought it would be fun to go on SeatGeek and look at some Chargers tickets. Now, I'm looking at that Week 1 game against the Cardinals. Obviously, I'm looking for the green dots, trying to get the best deal possible. And you know me, I like to sit near the end zone, want to see as many TDs as possible. Whether it's a Chargers game with a special lady friend or a Co-Wetzel concert with the boys, SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good. Red means bad. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with the promo code CHAT10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you so very much, SeatGeek. Last cut candidate that we need to discuss on today's show is one Trevor Penning. Now, Penning was someone that the Chargers did end up bringing back in free agency, and the conversation was that Penning was going to either be a depth piece at guard or he was going to be fighting it out for that starting open left guard spot. Now, I would have thought that a guy by the name of Cole Strange would also have to be in a battle, but it's clear that he is not going to be in a battle for his starting position. So you have a left guard position battle that's being fought between Coyote Yoshika, Jake Slaughter, and Trevor Penning. When I look at Jake Slaughter, there is no reason for the Chargers to move on from him. He is newly drafted, high draft pick, someone that is a center, but they are going to have him use at some left guard time, at least right now. Coyote Yoshika, that's a journeyman NFL player. You brought him in on a free agent contract, and he's actually been the number one guy at that left guard position. Now, I know that no jobs are won or lost during OTAs at Minicamp, and Jim Harbaugh has made that very clear as the head coach of the Chargers, but you would think that Trevor Penning, the guy who was with the organization previously, would be the guy if you were going to have a veteran at that one spot being at the one spot, and he's not. Now you also have to look at a lot of the young talent that you've brought in at those guard positions using multiple draft picks on interior offensive linemen to help build up this team. And it feels like it might be time to move on from Trevor Penning. He was young a couple of years ago. He's not young anymore. And he's a player that, frankly, isn't really cutting it in the National Football League. He came in as a tackle, wasn't moving fast enough to play that position. Now he's a guard, and he's never really gone in and beat anyone out for a job. At this point right now, he's your third guy, and you got younger guys that you spent draft picks on that you clearly think the world of. My opinion, man, it's time to cut bait. Just move on from Trevor Penning. It's time to be done. Who will be a surprise cut for the Chargers? Feels like every single year there is someone that gets left off the 53-man roster that ends up actually upsetting a lot of fans for that team, as well as someone that a lot of the people in the national media go, oh, why did that guy get cut? Where did he go? Why is he no longer on this team? I would have thought he would have made the squad. Let me know who your prediction is for that one. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss any of the content that we've got going on here. We love filming these shows. We hope that you love watching the videos. Thank you guys so much for coming in, hanging out. Go tell someone that you love them. And as always, bolt up.